Year's Eve, I went away for the night with my two best friends and one of their moms. I was home for the holidays from college, and my friend Sarah invited me to go to Palm Springs to celebrate New Year's with her mom and our friend Rachel. I didn't have any other plans, so I decided to go with them. We went to a cool city about an hour from where we live that is big on shopping and resorts. We planned to have a pretty calm night, watch the ball drop at a block party thing downtown, have a few drinks at the bar. Since we're on the West Coast, the ball drop is at 9, so at around 8, we ventured from our hotel, walking to the block party about a mile away. On the way, we passed by a very lively bar. We decided to stop by and spend 15 minutes dancing, but didn't get any drinks. It was a gay bar, and Sarah and Rachel, being gay, they were stoked on it and wanted to come back after the ball dropped, even though it was about 90% men there. We continued on the block party, get some dinner, a glass of champagne. The ball dropped, and they had a DJ, so we spent about an hour there dancing. After we got tired of it, we decided to head back to the bar and hang out there until midnight. Once we get there, Sarah's mom pays for a drink for each of us, but leaves soon after that because she was tired. It's about 10:30 at this point, and Sarah, Rachel, and I are enjoying our drinks and having fun dancing. Rachel tries some of my drink, since it was one she hadn't had before. I constantly have my guard up when drinking in public, and I felt safe at this bar because it was 90% gay men who I thought would not have any interest in me. I went back to the bar to get a second drink, and that's the last thing I remember. The rest I've gathered from Sarah and Rachel. Almost immediately after getting my second drink, I asked Rachel to go to the bathroom with me because I wasn't feeling well, even though I was completely fine 10 minutes before. Once in the bathroom, I just collapsed on the floor and was almost unresponsive. Rachel, now worried, somehow drags my half-lifeless body out to where Sarah was waiting for us. Security, seeing my condition and assuming I was wasted, asked us to leave. Sarah and Rachel decide to take me back to the hotel about half a mile away. By this point, I was unconscious and there were barely sounds escaping from my mouth. They saw someone leave the bar at the same time as us, who was walking near us, but they were preoccupied with trying to keep my lifeless body off the ground. At one point, I threw up all over myself, both of them, the sidewalk, etc. The next part of the story we had to get from Sarah, and Rachel doesn't have any memory of this. Still struggling to carry me, the man they saw leave the bar approached them. He was hitting on Rachel, trying to get her to go grab a drink with him. She was very agitated and told him to leave. Her friend needed help right now. He didn't take no for an answer and continued to follow us down the street, asking if they want to get drinks with him, if he can help carry me, and such. A middle-aged woman witnessing this came up and told the man off, something along the lines of, "Stop harassing these young women, or I'm going to call the police." He left after that. Next, by some miracle, an EMT and his wife, enjoying the holidays, ran into us on the street. He checked me out to make sure something wasn't majorly wrong, and then carried me the rest of the way to my hotel and into the room, since my friends could barely hold me up. They thanked him profusely, and him and his wife left. This is where Rachel's memory kicks back in. 5 minutes later, they get a knock on the door, and it's the EMT and his wife again. They came to let us know that a man followed us to the hotel, and they just saw him hop the gate and start to make his way to our room. My friends called hotel security, but they were unable to find him. My friends didn't get a glimpse of him, but I'm sure it was the same man from earlier. I spent the rest of the night vomiting everything in my body and dry heaving after that. I woke up the next morning in a pile of pillows and blankets on the bathroom floor. My last memory was at the bar getting a second drink and my friends filled me in on everything that had happened. Feeling like crap, I thought I must have drank way too much, but I had never blacked out before in my life, and the amount of drinks I had, 2 in 2 hours, since I didn't get to drink my second at the bar, didn't add up to me being completely unconscious. We decided my first drink had to have been drugged, since Rachel had some of it and had no memory of our walk home, even though she was fully functional. I'm sure that the man that was talking to Rachel and then followed us back was the one that slipped something into my drink. To this day, I don't really know how I could have been slipped something. I got my drink from the bar and never sat it down. My best guess was that it was already in the cup. Thankfully, I had good friends and kind strangers protecting me that night. It keeps me up at night, thinking what could have happened under different circumstances. Background. A few years ago, my parents and I moved out to the Maritimes. My parents were retiring, and I was done high school. Our house is situated at the very center of, and I mean this literally, a village. There are 20 people in this place at the most. The house is 300 feet from the road and has forests surrounding it, except the front, which are fields that border the driveway. Anyways, the year we moved, I ended up moving away to Ottawa for school. That same year, I went back home for Christmas between semesters. I'm your typical night owl, and my parents hate it. They were bugging me about sleeping in so much because they hadn't seen me in months, and I was sleeping away all of our time together. The incident. That night, I stayed up until sunrise, hoping to fix my sleep cycle. It was about 5:45 a.m. when my dog woke up and came into my room. She rested her head on my lap, and so I knew she wanted out. I went downstairs, made myself a tea, and then put a coat on. For whatever reason, that winter, it didn't snow much, and this particular day, it had snowed around 2 a.m. I remember because when I went to the bathroom, I got excited when I saw it falling. Anyways, I put on my coat and headed out with my dog. Usually she bolts out the door. She's fucking insane and does laps around the house at full gallop, but this day she didn't. Instead, she put her nose to the ground and trotted slowly around the house. I thought it was weird, so I followed her. That's when I noticed the footsteps. My parents' property has 3 buildings on it, a 2-car garage, a workshop, and the house itself. The driveway runs from the road and sort of pools, connecting all 3 buildings. The buildings make an L shape. The snow that had fallen was only 2 centimeters or so, and so I noticed, running from the forest, the bottom right point of the L, behind the house, a set of prints. I was extremely curious, so I followed them. They literally came out of the forest and ran around behind my house, where they stopped at a window. I lined my feet up and found myself looking in the window. Then the prints turned 90 degrees and vanished into the forest. That's when I realized the snow had fallen around 2 a.m., so whoever had left these prints must have come after that, or they wouldn't have left prints, obviously. And well, I assume most of our world is dark between 2 and 5:45 a.m., so either this guy was wandering the woods at night, what the fuck, or they had wandered up when the sun came up, also known as in the last 40 minutes or so. So I shouted for my dog, and we hustled inside. I told my dad, and he told me that he'd left the prints, which is bullshit because I was up all night and heard him snoring. Thanks for trying to calm my nerves. Anyway, though. Before I start, I know a lot of people come here and say this is 100% true, etc., and half the time it seems as though they've lied. I will go to say that what you're about to read is real. The events happened, and I still to this day don't understand it, and don't expect you to either. Theories and possible explanations are hugely welcomed. I work in a well-known clothing retail store in the UK. I'm not allowed to say which store or company, as in my contract, I'm permitted to talk about the company in what could be perceived in a negative way. And I work in the stockroom as part of the delivery stock team. About 2 or 3 weeks before Christmas 2014, maybe in between, I had asked my store manager if I could work some overtime to get more money for Christmas presents, and she thought this was a smart move, as my stockroom manager was out of the country on holiday visiting family also. Nearing to Christmas, the deliveries get pretty big, almost 3 times the size of regular deliveries, so there was the work available for me to come in and complete. It would involve stripping clothes from packets and hanging them within the stockroom. My manager had asked that rather than come in on a day I don't usually work, I work there part-time, that I should instead stay for additional hours past my contracted ones, which meant that I had to lock up. My manager trusted me to do this, as I've worked there for almost 3 years now, so she handed me her master key. The only other master key was with my stockroom manager, who is currently out of the country. This is where it begins. The time was nearing to around 8 p.m. at night. All of my colleagues had left the building, and I had locked the door after them, turning off the store music, and secured the bottom loading bay where the deliveries come in. I was in the stockroom on the 2nd floor, putting some hangers on the racking so that I could use them for the next delivery. I was stood underneath a puppy teddy that was stuffed between a pipe and a wooden piece of racking facing me. The teddy was an old toy from a delivery that was left behind, and my colleagues had given it a name. The name I can't remember because the teddy isn't really spoken of much. It just sits there. My iPod was plugged into a pair of speakers that had been in the stockroom since forever, and I was happily completing my task. Happily, until I heard a noise. Yes, that might sound cliche, but this noise was very familiar to my ears, and it was the noise of the bottom loading bay shutters being opened. I thought someone must be in the store, as the only way to open and shut them is from the panel next to them from the inside. So I paused my music and proceeded to walk down the stairs out back to the bottom loading bay. It was when I was about halfway down, the noise suddenly stopped. What I can say that always creeps me out about the place is that the lighting around the corridors, staircases, and stockrooms were lit up by strip lights, and these strip lights had sensors on them, so whenever you walk under one, you'd hear a small click, and it would come on. So there I was, gliding down the stairs. Click, click, click. I burst into the loading bay, expecting to see one of my colleagues. But lo and behold, it was empty. The shutters were shut. I embraced a shudder down my spine and simply span around and paced back to my workstation in the stockroom. I illuminated the strip lights and continued to hang some more hangers, the music from my iPod playing along, calming my nerves, until I remembered I turned my iPod off. I span around, horrified, and just stared at my iPod over on the shelf. As I took a breath and shook my head, I caught a glimpse of where the teddy should have been sitting. I was drenched with panic and took a step back to look further down the stockroom, about 100-yard stretch, where I had suspected a culprit had fled, only to face darkness. I stood for a moment, still bewildered by what had just unfolded, when I heard a faint click. I instantly moved to my right to get a good look down the stockroom, but yet I still faced darkness. Click, click, click was all I heard, gradually getting louder, closer. This is when Pavlov's theory kicked in, and I realized no lights were switching on in sync with the click. No lights switched on at all. I turned to the door, to see my only exit route, and then span my head around to be greeted with a dark figure in the distance. The figure was big, what I can only describe as perhaps a bodybuilder male. I need glasses for long-distance things, and usually only wear them in the cinema or at football games. Anyway, the darkness didn't help. Within his hand, I could see a small object, although when the hand clutched at it, I could make out that it was the teddy. This is when I felt adrenaline scream, run, out of the stockroom, down the corridor, through 2 doors, straight into the ladies' toilets, opposite the 2 offices. I ran straight into one of the 4 cubicles, the middle one, and locked myself in. I crouched on the toilet, crouched and shaking, partly because I'm a tall guy, and partially because my heart was hammering in my ears, putting my balance off. The doors of the toilet took a while to close slowly, as they should, and listened out for anybody to be approaching. The doors shut closed, which gave me a little relief, and I stopped and blinked, thinking for a moment. I wiped the sweat off my brow with my left forearm. As my head turned to meet my arm, I glanced down at the bottom of the cubicle. A face was just there. A face was pulling away from underneath, just as I caught a glimpse of the mouth and nose. My only description is that the teeth were black and seemed slightly bloody from a self-inflicted wound, and by the grayish skin tone and wrinkles, the person was old. I was injected with pure fear when I screamed, "Fuck off!" and kicked at the door, making it shake and slam, echoing around the walls in a thunder. I swang the door, looked back, took a deep breath, and braced myself before darting out of the toilets into the front of the store. I was charging along, prepared to attack anything to save myself from injury, yet nothing stood between me and the front door. I unlocked it with shaking hands and ran outside. I knew I had left my coat and iPod inside, but I was eager to get out. Locking the sliding doors behind me, I span to the shutter lock on the wall. It's located at the bottom of the wall, for a reason I'm unsure of. It's always been a hassle for people. I turned the key inside the lock, and the shutters were descending. The store shutters were on the inside of the store, just past the alarms, and as I crouched there, slowly watching the shutters come down, again, I witnessed the figure, still holding the teddy in the middle of the shop floor. It was dark outside, and it was dark inside at this point. The shop floor lights are different and have to be switched on in the office. I closed my eyes and begged the shutter to hurry as it hit the floor, and I snatched the key away and ran down the road to the high street. My phone was in my pocket where I always kept it, so I called the police and told them what happened. I told them I believe a male had broken in. The police arrived shortly, and I let them into the store. I had them escort me to the office to turn the lights on, and as I reached the office, I noticed the computer was on. I told them this wasn't on before, but they sped me up to turn the lights on so that they could search the store. After touring them around the store to search, even the lift, they found nobody and told me to go home. The officers had said that they would contact my manager tomorrow. The next day, I arrived at work at opening time, even though I wasn't scheduled to work. I was greeted by different officers from the night before and my store manager. We proceeded to go to the office just after my manager had opened the store, and I let my colleagues set up. The officers had said that they would continue a search that day and night again, and that my manager should ask for CCTV to be installed. The reason our store doesn't have cameras is because the theft rate isn't high enough to have them, apparently. We all think that's dumb. Then again, we get away with messing around sometimes. I walked to the stockroom to get my iPad and coat before leaving, when one last stab of fear yanked my heart to my boots. when I glared at the teddy, stuffed back into its usual place. I was allowed 2 contracted days off that week to rest. I think my manager thought I was seeing things and needed to sort myself out. I returned to work as usual. I was happy to do so, as it was within the daytime, and the store was full with people. Nothing has happened since. I still don't know how it was possible or what happened, if it was a prank, or some people had a motive. Some people think I'm crazy. Some think it might be a group. Tell me what you think. It was the worst experience of my life. Hey friends, I just wanted to end this video by thanking you for your continued support. You all mean so much to me, and I hope that you're doing well. Please comment and like if you enjoyed. Take good care, and sweet dreams.